Have you ever felt like the universe was trying to tell you something? That moment when you're thinking about an old friend and suddenly they call, the same number appearing everywhere you look. A stranger who shows up with exactly the words you needed to hear. You tell yourself it's just coincidence, but something inside whispers otherwise. What if I told you those whispers are right? What if these moments aren't random at all, but deliberate messages woven into the fabric of your reality? Think about it. How many times have you dismissed these experiences as mere chance, only to regret not paying attention later? The truth is, synchronicities are the universe's way of speaking directly to your soul. They're breadcrumbs leading you toward your true path, but we've been conditioned to ignore them. We've been taught to trust only what we can see and measure, missing the profound conversations happening all around us. But here's what they don't want you to know. When you start recognizing these patterns, everything changes. Your life transforms from a series of random events into a meaningful journey guided by forces beyond your understanding. The question isn't whether synchronicities are real. The question is, are you ready to listen? Chapter 1. The System That Blinds You. Do you remember what it felt like to be truly alive to the world around you before they taught you to shut it down? As a child, you knew things. You felt the electricity in the air before storms hit. You sensed when your mom was about to call your name from the other room. You picked up the phone, knowing exactly who was calling before you even looked. These weren't lucky guesses. They were connections your young mind naturally understood. But then something happened, didn't it? Every time you shared these magical moments, you heard the same words. It's just your imagination. Don't be silly. That's not how the world works. Slowly, like water, dripping on stone, they wore away your natural gifts until you forgot you ever had them. Why do you think that happened? Was it really just adults trying to help you grow up? Or was there something more calculated at work? Think about your education for a moment. Did they ever teach you how to trust your gut feelings? How to recognize when the universe was sending you signals? Of course not. Instead, they filled your head with formulas, dates, and facts, anything to keep your attention locked on the external world and away from your inner wisdom. They told you that only things you could touch, weigh, and measure were real. Everything else, pure fantasy. Question this system, and you were labeled a troublemaker. Trust your intuition, and you were being irrational. Feel connected to something bigger, and you were just being emotional. But here's what's fascinating. Some of the most brilliant minds in history saw right through this programming. Einstein didn't just stumble upon his theories through cold logic. Tesla received his greatest insights through intuitive flashes that defied conventional thinking. Jung dedicated his life to understanding these mysterious connections that mainstream psychology refused to acknowledge. Yet what happens when ordinary people like us start talking about these experiences today? We're dismissed as conspiracy theorists, spiritual fanatics, or people who've watched too many movies. Isn't that curious? The same experiences that inspired humanity's greatest breakthroughs are now treated like mental illness. Why would society work so hard to convince you that these moments mean nothing? What are they so afraid of? The answer is simple but profound. Once you start seeing the patterns, you can't unsee them. Once you realize that reality is responding to you, your thoughts, your emotions, your deepest desires, everything changes. You stop being a passive victim of circumstances and start becoming a conscious creator of your experience. And that terrifies those who profit from keeping you small, confused, and dependent. But let me ask you something personal. In your heart of hearts, don't you already know this is true? Haven't there been moments in your life when the synchronicities were so perfect, so precisely timed, that dismissing them as coincidence felt like lying to yourself? Maybe it was meeting your life partner in the most impossible circumstances. Perhaps it was finding the exact book you needed at exactly the right moment. Or that time when you took a wrong turn that led to an opportunity that changed everything. These weren't accidents, they were invitations from a reality far more intelligent and interconnected than you've been taught to believe. The tragedy is that most people experience these miraculous moments and then immediately talk themselves out of them. They've been so thoroughly programmed to doubt their own experiences that they choose the cold comfort of skepticism over the thrilling possibility that life might actually have meaning. But what if you stopped doing that? What if you started treating these synchronicities not as random quirks of probability, but as breadcrumbs leading you toward your true purpose? The moment you make that shift, something incredible happens. The synchronicities don't just continue, they multiply. It's as if reality itself recognizes that you're finally paying attention and decides to turn up the volume. Your life transforms from a series of unconnected events into a meaningful story where every chapter builds toward something greater. You begin to feel what you were meant to feel all along, that you're not alone, that you're guided, and that your existence matters in ways you're only beginning to understand. Chapter 2: Hidden Patterns in Reality. It happened to you last week, didn't it? That moment when everything felt too perfect to be chance. You were stuck on a problem that had been eating at you for days, and then boom, a stranger at the coffee shop said exactly what you needed to hear. Or maybe it was that song on the radio, the one that played right as you were thinking about giving up. The lyrics hit you like a lightning bolt, speaking directly to your soul. You felt it in your bones. This wasn't random. This was something else entirely. But then what did you do? You probably shook your head, laughed it off, and told yourself it was just a weird coincidence. Because that's what you've been trained to do, isn't it? Dismiss the magic the moment it appears. Here's what nobody wants you to understand: those moments aren't glitches in reality, they're reality trying to wake you up. Every time you see 11:11 on the clock, every time you bump into exactly the right person at exactly the right time, every time life seems to be speaking to you in a language only you can understand, you're witnessing something profound. You're seeing proof that the universe isn't the cold, mechanical place they taught you it was. Think about it. Everything in nature follows patterns. The spiral of a seashell mirrors the spiral of a galaxy. Your heartbeat syncs with certain rhythms. Even your breath follows the same pattern as ocean waves. If everything else in existence is connected by invisible threads, why would your life be any different? The truth is, it isn't. Your thoughts are like radio signals broadcasting into the cosmos, and synchronicities are the responses coming back. It's a conversation you've been having your entire life, but you were never taught the language. Carl Jung figured this out decades ago. He watched person after person experience these meaningful coincidences and realized something revolutionary. there's an intelligence behind reality that most people never notice. He called it synchronicity, but what he was really describing was the universe's way of communicating with conscious beings. But here's where it gets interesting. The more you start paying attention to these messages, the more they show up. It's like reality realizes you're finally listening and decides to speak louder. Suddenly, the signs are everywhere. Books fall open to exactly the page you need. You overhear conversations that answer your deepest questions. Numbers follow you around like breadcrumbs, leading to your destiny. And that's when you realize something that will change everything. You're not powerless. You're not just floating through life, hoping good things happen to you. You're in an active relationship with existence itself, and it's been trying to guide you all along. But why don't more people talk about this? Why isn't this taught in schools or discussed in the mainstream? Because once you understand that reality responds to your inner world, you stop being controllable. You stop looking outside yourself for all the answers. You start trusting the intelligence that's been whispering to you since the day you were born. And that terrifies those who profit from your confusion and dependency. So let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if every struggle you've ever faced was actually the universe trying to redirect you toward something better? What if every closed door was just life's way of pointing you toward the right one? What if you've been receiving guidance all along, but you just didn't know how to read the signs? The people living the most extraordinary lives aren't the luckiest. They're the ones who learn to recognize when life is speaking to them. They understand that synchronicities aren't just pretty coincidences to smile about. They're invitations to step into a reality where meaning and purpose aren't accidents, but the very foundation of existence. Chapter 3: The Mechanics Behind Synchronicities. You want to know the secret that changes everything? It's this: your mind isn't just watching reality unfold, it's actively creating it. I know that sounds impossible, but stay with me for a moment. Have you ever bought a new car and then suddenly started seeing that exact same model everywhere you looked? They were always there, weren't they? But your brain wasn't paying attention until you owned one yourself. That's your mind filtering reality, deciding what's important enough for you to notice. But here's where it gets wild. The same thing happens with synchronicities, except on a much deeper level. Think about the last time you experienced a meaningful coincidence. What was going on in your life right before it happened? Were you asking for guidance? Struggling with a decision? Feeling lost or confused? I bet you were. And that's not an accident. Your brain has this incredible system called the reticular activating system. It's like a security guard that decides what information gets through to your conscious mind and what gets filtered out. When you start believing that the universe communicates through signs, something magical happens. That security guard gets new instructions. Suddenly, it's looking for patterns, connections, and messages everywhere. But this goes way beyond just noticing things that were already there. Science is starting to prove something that mystics have known for centuries. Consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it shapes it. You've probably heard about those weird quantum physics experiments where particles behave differently when they're being watched. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real. At the tiniest level of reality, the act of paying attention actually changes what happens. Your awareness has power. Now imagine that on a larger scale. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every intention you set, they're all like radio signals broadcasting into the universe. And what you broadcast determines what you receive back. This is why people who expect synchronicities get more of them. It's not just that they're paying attention, though that's part of it. It's that their entire energy is shifting. They're tuning into a frequency where meaningful connections become possible. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Your subconscious is working behind the scenes in ways you can't even imagine. While you're busy with your daily life, worrying about work and bills and relationships, your deeper mind is processing thousands of connections you're not aware of. It's linking information, recognizing patterns, and setting up the perfect conditions for synchronicities to occur. Have you ever had the experience of thinking about someone intensely only to run into them the next day? Or obsessing over a problem, then overhearing exactly the right conversation that gives you the answer? That's not coincidence. That's your subconscious mind orchestrating reality in ways your logical brain couldn't possibly plan. The people who live in constant synchronicity aren't lucky. They're not special. They just understand something that most people don't. Reality is responsive. It's alive. It's waiting for you to engage with it consciously instead of just letting life happen to you. But here's what nobody talks about. This process has been hijacked by your conditioning. You've been programmed to focus on problems, limitations, and fears. So guess what your reticular activating system looks for? More problems, more limitations, more reasons to be afraid. Your subconscious aligns events that confirm your worst expectations because that's what you're broadcasting. The moment you shift your focus, the moment you start looking for signs of guidance instead of signs of danger, everything changes. Your brain starts filtering for opportunities instead of obstacles. Your subconscious starts orchestrating helpful coincidences instead of confirming your fears. This is why awakening to synchronicity feels like stepping into a completely different world. Because, in a very real sense, you are. You're stepping out of the reality where you're a powerless victim of circumstances and into the reality where you're a conscious co creator of your experience. The question isn't whether this is possible. The question is, are you ready to stop being a passive observer and start being an active participant in the miracle of your own life? Because once you understand that your consciousness is the key that unlocks the deeper intelligence of reality, there's no going back. And that's when the real magic begins. Chapter 4: Tuning Your Mind to Synchronicity. Why do some people live like they have a direct line to the universe while you're still waiting for your phone to ring? You know exactly what I'm talking about. That friend who always seems to be in the right place at the right time. Who gets the perfect job without even trying? Who meets their soulmate in the most impossible circumstances? Who finds money on the street right when they need it most? You watch them and think they're just lucky. But what if I told you luck has nothing to do with it? The difference between people who live charmed lives and those who struggle isn't some cosmic lottery. It's something much simpler and much more powerful. It's about what frequency you're tuned into. Picture this. You're standing in Times Square at midnight. The air is buzzing with hundreds of radio signals, music, news, conversations in dozens of languages. But if you don't have a radio in your hand, all you hear is silence. The signals are there, surrounding you, penetrating every inch of space around you. But without the right receiver, they might as well not exist. That's exactly what's happening with your life right now. The universe is broadcasting guidance, opportunities, and messages constantly. But most people are walking around without their radio turned on. Here's what separates the people who seem blessed from everyone else. They learned how to tune in. They stopped dismissing the strange coincidences as meaningless and started treating them like breadcrumbs, leading to treasure. But here's the kicker: the moment you start paying attention, everything changes. It's like reality realizes you're finally listening and decides to speak louder. Those little synchronicities you used to ignore, they multiply. They get more obvious. They start happening so frequently that even your skeptical friends can't deny something unusual is going on. And it all comes down to how your mind works. You have this incredible system in your brain that's constantly deciding what's important and what isn't. When you walk into a crowded room, you don't consciously hear every conversation. Your brain filters out the noise and lets you focus on what matters. The same thing happens with life itself. When you tell your brain that synchronicities matter, something magical happens. It starts looking for them everywhere. That security guard in your mind gets new instructions. Find me the signs. Show me the patterns. Help me see the connections. But most people have programmed their mental security guard to look for problems, dangers, and reasons to worry. So that's exactly what they find. Their brain filters out the magic and shows them more evidence that life is hard, random, and unfair. What you focus on literally rewrites your reality. When you're vibrating at the frequency of fear and doubt, you attract more situations that confirm those feelings. But when you shift into curiosity, gratitude, and wonder, you start magnetizing experiences that match that energy. This is why people who meditate or practice mindfulness report more synchronicities. They've cleared the mental static that was blocking the signal. They've tuned their consciousness to a frequency where magic becomes visible. But here's where most people sabotage themselves, even when they start noticing the signs. They see the synchronicity, they feel that tingle of recognition, and then what do? They second guess it. They talk themselves out of it. They choose the safe, logical path instead of following the breadcrumbs. And that's when the synchronicities start to fade. Because the universe isn't just sending you messages for entertainment, it's offering you opportunities for transformation. But those opportunities require something from you. They require trust. When you see the sign and you act on it, you're telling reality, yes, I'm ready for more. When you ignore it or dismiss it, you're essentially hanging up on the universe mid-conversation. The people living extraordinary lives aren't just better at recognizing synchronicities, they're braver about following them. They understand that every meaningful coincidence is an invitation to step into a bigger version of themselves. So let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. How many synchronicities have you ignored this week? How many doors has the universe opened that you were too scared to walk through? How many times has life tried to guide you towards something amazing, only to watch you choose familiarity over possibility? Chapter 6: Creating Synchronicities Through Action. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize they've been playing a game they didn't even know existed. For most people, that moment never comes. But for you, It's happening right now. You see, recognizing synchronicities is just the beginning. It's like discovering you have a superpower, but never learning how to use it. The real magic happens when you stop being a passive observer and start becoming an active participant in the conversation with reality. Think about the last time something amazing happened in your life. I mean, really amazing. The kind of thing that made you shake your head and say, I can't believe that just happened. Now think back. Were there signs leading up to it? Little nudges you almost ignored? Coincidences that suddenly make perfect sense in hindsight? That wasn't luck. That was you accidentally stumbling into alignment with the universe's plan for you. The question is, what if you could do it on purpose? Here's what the people living extraordinary lives understand that most don't. Synchronicities aren't just pretty signs to smile about. They're doorways. And every doorway requires a choice. Do you walk through, or do you keep walking past? Most people spend their entire lives walking past. They see the door, they feel the pull, they know something important is happening, and then they talk themselves out of it. It's probably nothing, they say. I'm being silly. And with that thought, they slam the door shut on their own destiny. But what if you stopped doing that? What if you started treating every meaningful coincidence like a personal invitation from the universe itself? The first thing you need to understand is that synchronicities respond to clarity. When you're confused about what you want, the signs are fuzzy. When you're crystal clear about your desires, the universe speaks in high definition. So start asking for specific guidance, not vague requests like show me what to do, but clear intentions like show me if this relationship is right for me or guide me toward my next career move. And then, and this is crucial, pay attention to how the answers come because they won't arrive the way you expect. The universe doesn't send emails or text messages. It speaks through the song that plays at the perfect moment, the conversation you overhear, the person who randomly mentions exactly what you need to hear. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your energy state determines what kind of synchronicities you attract. When you're anxious, stressed, or constantly second guessing yourself, you're broadcasting static. The universe can barely get through. But when you're in a state of trust, excitement, and openness, it's like upgrading from dial up to high speed internet. The signs start flowing so fast, you can barely keep up. This is why people going through major life changes often report experiencing the most synchronicities. They're in a state of surrender, open to new possibilities, willing to be guided. They've stopped trying to control everything and started trusting the process. And that brings us to the part that separates the dreamers from the achievers, taking action. Because here's what nobody tells you: synchronicities are time sensitive. They're not just signs, they're opportunities. And opportunities don't wait around forever. When you see the same sign repeatedly, when you feel that undeniable pull towards something, when the universe keeps putting the same message in your path, that's not a gentle suggestion. That's reality screaming at you to move. The people who seem blessed aren't just better at seeing the signs, they're braver about following them. They understand that every synchronicity is a test. Will you trust what you're being shown, or will you let fear keep you stuck where you are? Conclusion: the path of alignment. Here's the moment of truth. You know what most people do after learning everything you just learned? Absolutely nothing. They nod their heads, feel that spark of recognition, maybe even get goosebumps when they think about their own experiences with synchronicity. And then what happens? Life gets busy. The phone rings, work calls, and they go right back to sleepwalking through their existence, dismissing every sign as coincidence. Don't be that person. Because right now, in this moment, you're standing at a crossroads that most people never even see. On one side is the old you, the person who explains away miracles, who chooses logic over magic, who waits for permission from a universe that's already given you everything you need. On the other side is the person you could become, someone who recognizes that reality itself is trying to guide you toward your highest good. Which version of yourself are you going to choose? I know what you're thinking. But what if I'm wrong? What if I follow these signs and they lead me nowhere? What if I look foolish? And that's exactly the voice that's been keeping you trapped your entire life. That's the conditioning talking, the programming that tells you to play it safe, stay small, and never trust your own inner knowing. But let me ask you something that might shake you awake. What if you're wrong about being wrong? What if the signs you've been dismissing are actually breadcrumbs leading you toward the life you've always dreamed of? What if your fear of looking foolish is the only thing standing between you and everything you've ever wanted? The universe doesn't send backup signals. When it whispers and you don't listen, it speaks louder. When you ignore that, it might shout once or twice. But if you keep dismissing the guidance, something tragic happens. The signs stop coming. You drift back into the gray world of random events and missed opportunities, wondering why some people seem blessed while you feel forgotten. But that doesn't have to be your story. Every person living an extraordinary life made a decision at some point to trust what couldn't be proven. They chose faith over fear, intuition over logic, action over analysis. They stopped waiting for guarantees and started following the breadcrumbs. The synchronicities in your life aren't entertainment. They're not cosmic jokes or random quirks of probability. They are personal invitations from the intelligence that created you, nudging you toward alignment, toward purpose, toward the version of yourself you came here to be. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to spend the rest of your life wondering, what if? Or are you finally going to trust that the universe knows what it's doing? The next time you see 11:11 on the clock, don't just make a wish. Pay attention to what you were thinking about. When that song plays at the perfect moment, don't call it coincidence. Ask what it's trying to tell you. When you meet exactly the right person at exactly the right time, don't brush it off as luck. Recognize it as orchestration. Your life is not a series of random events. It's a conversation between you and something infinitely wise that wants to see you succeed. The question is, are you finally ready to join the conversation? The signs are everywhere. They always have been. They're just waiting for you to wake up and see them.